on my computer, by the way, so ×4 is okay.
No worries.
So I think around about 5 minutes stuff starts happening. So this is all
very quick thing. Are you on low graphic settings?
No, because I'm a graphics snob, so I've got it turned right up, which is why.
Okay, right now press Control Alt F.
Control Alt F.
What's your FPS in that top left corner?
Frame rate is 140.
Okay, it should be fine then. Yeah, I mean, 1.8 lags quite a bit for everyone. I was just checking that was at a decent rate on regular speed.
Oh, ×4 is perfectly fine. ×8.
Yeah, I mean, ×8 kind of glitches a bit for everyone, but it's just to get through the replay. You're not really watching what's going on at that point.
This was my first experience of it. And the thing is, I had a clue something was up about a minute before. You've kind of gone further ahead. Because even about 3 minutes in, I do the scouts.
And what's your normal scout?
I think it's about 3 minutes, 3:15 if I screw up. So there's an overlord at 3:15. The one at the front goes wandering into the base.
Okay. So why do you wait so long at the front? Why not just send it in from the start?
Well, this was... Nowadays, I wander around a bit first because I'm a little bit more smoother with what I'm doing.
Okay.
But at this exact time, I wasn't.
I'm just a little worried that, like, yeah, if the pylon was in the back, you just don't get any information if that stalker comes out, right? Whereas if you're going to scout anyway, especially, like, it's just nice to go straight through. So, like, I'm a big fan of just queuing the overlord straight from the natural.
So that means you arrive at 2:30, though.
Yeah.
Well,
so
you arrive at the front at 2:08, right?
Yeah, you get there very, very quickly. So then the thing is, as soon as you find that second pylon, you know where it's going to go. So it's just about finding where that second pylon, because they can't really put it at the front, or the Zerglings can run up to the wall and see what tech structure it is.
Well, since then, I'm actually a lot more active with it. So This is a few weeks ago now.
Just keep in mind, if you're because a lot of players, even if they're nice and active with it, they're floating lava or something like that sometimes. So just be wary of, like, are you ever actually getting any extra information from being active with it?
Well, usually yes, because I mean, I rarely do anything without a reason. So you're telling me all this stuff, and most of it I'll ignore you because I won't know why I'm doing it. But the main thing was he killed it straight away with the stalker. So now I've got zero information. And what happened was that it's a bit like, when a chicken loses its head and it wanders around, its remaining neurons fire and it does chicken behavior. Well, you get that. So if you're a Zerg player, your chicken behavior is make drones and just stare until you eventually get supply blocks. You just make so many drones, you just get supply blocks. So that was basically my initial response to this.
Okay.
Which is obviously the worst thing possible.
Well, that's something where having a solid build order defends this timing, actually. Just a normal ground response should defend this, because it's the same response if it's an Archon drop or anything as well.
Yes. Well, this is actually what happens in the second game. But that's interesting you should say that. Good, because I was kind of hoping that you would give advice on each game, and I could see whether it tallies up with what I actually managed to learn.
Yeah.
Because all of these games were played in quick succession. But what threw me, I think, was the fact that I lost the Overlord, and I'm going, because he's normally a macro player, so I'm going, well, is he going to, should I be droning? When shall I be droning? Just losing that Overlord totally threw me into headless chicken mode.
Okay.
So my first question is, in the absence of a third base and no other information, do you assume the worst and just start cranking out units? What do you do? Or do you just try to never get into this situation? Because I do have some scouting out. I've got the front covered. I just lost that damn Overlord, the one that gives me so much information.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, with your game plan, that Overlord should normally die. Now, don't get me wrong, there's metas where you can play for like a week where everyone goes double adept, triple adept, and just ignores the Overlord and lets you see everything, which is always nice and friendly of them. But generally, you should be expecting to lose it. So you should honestly be following the most stock standard game plan. Unless you're rushing mutas or something like that, you're doing something that's like a little bit kind of out of the far end of strategy where it's not quite as solid and you need to be very flexible and adapt to everything that happens, which you're not. You're doing kind of just a macro into Roach's play. Your standard play should be fine. And it shouldn't be until a bit later where you start thinking about, is he going to macro or not? And what's my next level of scouting? And at what point do I, if it's a 2-base all-in, need to stop droning and go, hey, are you taking the gases on the natural and that sort of stuff? So this is not an all-in, right? This is a pressure, and it's the same if it was an Archon drop or anything, or maybe like eight zealots with charge with the prism as well, like 4-gate zealot charge pressure. There's a few other options. So I think we shouldn't actually need to react at all. Yeah.
Well, this is what my reaction was to go headless chicken, unfortunately, but just make drones. But yes, so this is what I figured as well. So. This game just goes totally downhill from this point, so no one's point in watching this. But I'd seen that there was he was late on the gases on the natural, so it wasn't anything techie. And then I charged Overlord, and there was a stalker there. So I thought, and then I didn't get any more information, and then it's when I froze up. But
did you see the Twilight? Because
you
saw the Twilight, but did you not notice that Twilight? Maybe
I didn't notice the Twilight.
Yeah,
I was a little bit thrown by having a stalker out, so I don't know what threw me. Something threw me.
I think we kind of threw ourselves a little bit because it's a very normal game. It's a very normal game, but I think sometimes your game sense is off. This happens to me as well. Where you're like, oh wait, there's not a stalker normally there. This is the most normally timed stalker of all time, and you actually saw everything you needed to see. But I mean, like I said, just if the Overlord goes through from the start, or like you said, since then you've been way more active with the Overlord anyway. You can confirm. But if you knew it was a Twilight, if you'd paid attention to that, what would your normal game plan have been? So if it's a standard ground style, what do you do?
Now I'm thinking about it. I did notice the Twilight because I do drop the Roach Warren straight away.
Okay. So what is the response to ground? Like, what's your reaction or your build order if you know it's ground?
See, after this game, I thought I should just do my normal thing. And the normal thing to a Twilight, because it could be Archon drop or Immortal drop or blah, 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 is to get 6 Roaches at each base. In 2 groups. I'll drone to 2 bases, get 6 Roaches at each base, and then fill the other base with drones.
Sorry, you said 2 bases of drones?
2 bases of drones.
How many gases?
3 tops.
Okay, so 3 gases, 2 bases. How many drones is that total?
That's 41, isn't it, or something like that?
Perfect. Yeah, just checking.
Roughly. So, and then but don't put anything on the 3rd. Then get the 2 little Roach groups. And then fill the 3rd and get the Hydra in. And then maybe get a 4th, but then it's all a bit loose at that point.
Yeah, well, it's basically drone behind it, and then add Evo, Hydras, 4th. It's all your normal stuff.
Yes.
All your normal stuff as you go to that next stage of the game. Yeah. Now, okay, so you mentioned earlier, well, what if he's going to go aggressive and there's no 3rd? That's something that would happen as you're droning. So normally you would build your Roaches. You'd have them popping out, if not already out right about this point, okay? Maybe not all 12 out yet, but you'd have a decent number, right? So let's imagine you maybe lose a few drones, you kill some Adepts, or he doesn't commit, cancels, keeps posturing around, you drone up a bit during it. Now, obviously, you would be at a lower drone count right now, right? We'd be at about 41, 42 drones, somewhere around there. Yep. But then we'd be droning once we have those 12, 13 Roaches out, unless he's warping in tons more Adepts, which we can see with our Overlords. And then we might escalate the Roaches. But assuming you both tread water there for a little bit, at some point you're droning. At what point do you drone up to? So what are you looking for? So as you're droning, right, to 66 drones, 6 gases, what are you looking at in their follow-up? Obviously, a third Nexus. Let's say you see a third Nexus.
That is basically it. So those 2 Lings are sitting there, waiting for another Nexus to go down. And if they don't go down, I'll still drone the 3rd. Somewhat. I may or may not put the gases on, but if the 3rd base doesn't go wrong, it doesn't go down, then it's obviously spores, and Hydras like hell, basically. And then if I get leftover minerals, I might throw them into drones.
Cool. So if there's no 3rd Nexus, let's come up with a sharp figure. How do we want 4 gases, 5 gases, 3 full mineral lines? If there's no 3rd Nexus, where will we
Hydras? For the Hydras, I'm going to need 4 gases.
So here's a hot tip. If they're on 2 base, never build a Hydralisk. It's just not going to get, it's too costly. Unless you're ahead. Like if you slap down the first pressure, maybe you can get there. But you can like very slowly open up that tech tree, but roaches and ravagers are all you need. You just need to, and zerglings, you just need to survive because you've got such a big economic advantage. If you're trying to get hydras up, hydras cost too much. Hydras are really good once you get a bigger army, and most importantly, once they've got both of their upgrades. But until they get their upgrades, they're just really fragile. So it's too easy to get caught trying to rush hydras. And this is what a lot of Zerg players do, is they just try to get hydras up straight away as soon as the lair's done.
Yeah, I don't. It's not that extreme. I do get I usually do get the upgrades. If you go to the second game, what happens is that I then go back. So this game is I've got 54 drones. I get absolutely massacred. I mean, you can kind of guess where this game goes.
Let's stay here though. So shut your eyes on this game. I want you to think theory. We need to map that out. We've got to because this is so important to be really clear and exact, right? Right now, just then you're hopping between a bunch of different theoretical scenarios without having an exact drone count for each situation. It's important to have the exact drone count just to make it take the decision making out of it in your head. So let's say there's no third nexus. You can maybe very slowly go towards hydras, but that's really not your goal. Honestly, if you're getting to hydras, it's like it's building machine guns to deal with a cavalry charge. It's like the actual scary 2-base all-in is so much earlier than that kind of thing. So it's all just about surviving.
I'm usually heading for hydras to win the game.
And that's after you've gained a big advantage. So let's get rid of hydras as part of the response. If there's no third nexus at all, you're just massing Roach Ravager for the most part. So is it just 4 gases, 3 full mineral lines? Like where do you stop? How many drones?
If I'm super nervous, it'll be 3 gases into the roaches. And even then, there's still often the odd mineral left over. So I'll sneak out a few drones at that point. It depends how paranoid I am. I mean...
So let's imagine you've built at least 10 drones after the 41 drones. So imagine like this situation in this game. The adept pressure happens. You're defending it fine. Yep. You've droned up to this drone, let's say 50 drones. You're on 3 gases. So that's an extra 10 drones on your third mineral line. 3 gases. We don't see a third. Do we just add another gas and just build roaches nonstop from there, play really conservatively? Do we squeeze out 2 more gases and like 6 or 7 more drones, go to the mid to high 50s? What do you feel comfortable with?
If I've got 10 drones on the third base, I would still be... Well, I mean, it's more a case of I hit the roaches. Well, you've got to get the overlords as well, but either I'll hit the roaches... This goes one of 3 ways. I'll either hit the roaches until I've just got minerals, and then I'll just make drones with the leftover minerals.
Okay.
Or I'll go, okay, I'm not quite sure what's happening. I'll just make a bunch of overlords, and I'll over overlord. So if I'm really nervous, rather than getting the drones, I'll get the extra overlords.
It's a good stopgap, but we'd rather have something that's more definite. So the problem with everything there is you just aren't playing a game right now. You don't have to inject or anything. And you just ummed and ahed a lot and had kind of 2 different responses, which you both had to think through a little bit. When we're in game and there's some adept shading around and we don't know exactly what's happening and we're scouting, we're going to be infinitely more confused about what we're doing, right? So this is why I want us to define this really tight. So I'm just going to give you a little cheat sheet here instead. So the overlords, if you are confused in a game, you really can't read it. That's a good idea. I love that little, just let's get a bit of supply gap free so we can be a bit more reactive. Make sure I can suddenly explode into drones without having to build overlords or suddenly explode into army. That's nice. That should never be a core plan. That's more of like I'm in a weird position. This will help me through it, hopefully.
Yep.
So it's a 2-base all in. Where do we go to? I'm going to say, let's go back to fundamentals. If they're on 2 bases, what's the maximum amount of workers that they could get efficiency from on 2 bases?
Oh, well, they've got 44.
44.
And that's assuming they go for the gases, in which case sometime later they're going to be taking up.
Yeah, well, I mean, they could just be making lots of sentries and stalkers with a fewer models, right? Something like that. There's a few gas-heavy things. Adding some Archons to a charged auto model attack on 2 base. It is a thing. It's rare, but it happens. So 44. Now, let's say they're building Immortals, Archons, that sort of stuff. You're building Roaches and Zerglings for the most part. They're higher tech than you. So you definitely want an economy advantage. I mean, you normally do as the defender anyway to be ahead, right? So just thinking their army's a little bit better than yours. You're defending. You want to have a little bit of an economy lead. Take a guess. Where do you think, if we're just massing Roach Ravager, maybe some Zerglings trying to survive,
So
how many drones?
My instinct is going to be wrong. Is by the time that if they're getting a pile of stuff like that, then I will probably fill that third base mineral line, but not directly. I'll be doing it as I say, as I've got
a little bit incrementally. You'll be kind of
as I pile the roaches on. But essentially, I'll be piling the roaches on. I won't be taking the 5th and 6th gases. I might take a 4th if they're really late.
So this is something really. You actually want to go 5 gases a lot quicker, because Ravagers are the most important tool against all-ins here. So that's the one thing which you're missing understanding-wise. I think overall, you'd mostly navigate your way through these situations okay, even though it's not 100% defined in your brain. And I'm criticizing that because I love us to have a set play we can just pull out and just put into action, right? You know I'm obsessed with that, right? I think that helps us a lot as a player. But I think it's good because we've touched on one thing here, which is you'd stay a bit too low on gas. And something like force fields might really ruin your day. In general, corrosive bile is just so good when they're trying to push their way in and end the game. Such a good zoning tool, so good for breaking force fields. So what I'm going to say is if you want to go 55 to 60 drones, 5 gases. So we're not going 6 gases, we're not going 66 drones, but we are going a solid 10 to 15 workers ahead of the Protoss. Some people are like, 15 workers, that's heaps. Well, so, if you screw up and take some damage earlier, we're not going to push it that far. We might stop at 52 drones, right? Because, I'm a little behind in this game. It hasn't been smooth. Let's just go also 4 gas.
We don't mind trading the army down if we can build it as fast as we lose it, right? So
yeah, exactly. That way, I mean, it just gives you a bit more of a sure thing economic advantage. So that's a nice way of saying, though, like if you have a really smooth opening, you shut down in the depth pressure. Let's say you have no idea what's happening. Let's say all these Adepts go in, they shade on 10 roaches, you kill them instantly. You in your mind can say, okay, I have a free pass to 60 drones. Because even if they don't take a third, 60 drones, 5 gases, making Roach Ravager, that's my game plan for defending the 2 base all in, right? So the reason I like that next stage being defined is we already have an idea in our head of as soon as I feel safe against the first pressure, however quick that eventuates, I go straight to 60 drones, 5 gases.
Right.
And only once I see a third base and verify they're actually building probes for it, that's a very high level thing. It's up to you whether or not you want to do the whole... Most people just assume the third Nexus is real. We can do that.
I usually double scout it, but yeah.
Yeah, and you can also check, even when it first starts, you want to look for flashing lights on the next eye for if they're building probes or not, is a way of confirming that they're actually preparing to take that base. But that's a very advanced. But I like this idea, right? Because then it just says, step 1, you've got that first reaction, 41 drones make roaches, and then it's jump up to the next stage as soon as you feel safe, straight to 60 drones, 5 gases. And
so let's supposing this a big attack comes at 7-8 minutes or something after the Adept. I'm just defending it with Ravagerling because my current way of doing it is to get one of the Hydra upgrades and then hit the Hydra button.
Yeah, no, Roach Ravager much better. It's just so much easier. You're going to play a lot of people who do shit timings, and if you get away with the Hydras, there's going to be like a narrow point where your upgrade kicks in and you have like 10 Hydras behind some Roaches, and it's fucking great. But if they hit 30 seconds earlier, you'd just like, they'd get on top of you. And if you've ever seen Hydras with charge lots on top of them or anything like that, you're like, wow, this unit's terrible. So it's just a little bit unnecessarily risky, that's all. So don't get me wrong, if it's working consistently for you, that's okay. But it's one of these things where the problem is if we don't have that clearly defined, we too often are like, okay, well, I defended the first pressure. And because you're not thinking about the next attack that you've got to be safe against, you end up taking 6 gases, 66 drones, dropping a 4th base, building a Hydra Den, building an Evo or 2 Evos, and then this attack comes out and you're like, wait, it's a 2-base attack, and you recalibrate and you realize all that money is in the wrong things. So this way we're by default being safe, a little bit safer. We're kind of just adding that in-between step before the Hydralisks.
Okay.
Yeah. And then as soon as we see a third Nexus, we just scrap it and, okay, we can go to the Hydras. It's all good. But yeah, that's probably one of the best things for safety. Roaches are just such a good defensive tool, and that's their real power. When you look at pro StarCraft, if you see a Protoss who's very aggressive, but then goes into a macro game afterwards, A lot of what they're trying to do is just force a lot of roaches and ravagers, and then avoid letting the roaches and ravagers fight the way they want to, and then get the big later game units that do really well versus roach ravager, right? Whereas like if the Zerg rushes to hydras, the Protoss wants to rush up to like the storm and everything like that, right?
Yeah.
But against the roaches, they're more happy to just, to hang out. So it kind of slows the game down for both sides. If you build a lot of roaches, it definitely slows down your build up into those better units, the hydras and the banes. But they've got to commit to a lot of aggression to make you build so much roach ravager, right?
Yep.
Cool. Any last questions on that scenario before we zoom through some other replays?
No, let's go to the next one, because the next one, I at least have some sort of response ready.
Awesome. So which one's the next one? Is it 2 base adept?
I don't go completely headless chicken. I do need to lower the sound of my game.
Yes. Yeah, always.
It's probably coming through your speakers.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, I heard only a tiny bit. It wasn't too much.
Okay.
Okay. Just hop out of that replay, and we will hop into the next one.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, what's really cool there is we've mapped out a response now.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of what happens in the next one. So the next one, I at least take a step back and say, well, hang on, I'm going to borrow my Archon drop one, because that's not far off.
It's basically the same thing. Yeah, you can one size fits all. Robo or Twilight opening. It's like, I like to just say it's ground play, and that's
that's good. I've only got one response, so
yep, it's either Stargate or it's the ground things. I like simplifying our reactions to those broad categories, and then okay, there's actually people who are hitting us with DTs at 4 minutes and 15 seconds with some crazy, but okay, now it's time to get a bit more fine-tuned and recognize what, this guy's hitting me with Adepts at 4 minutes 20. What the hell? Okay, I need to fine-tune it. Until people hit us with these insanely sharp, Neeb-esque timings, we don't need to worry about them, right? I've been coaching quite a few Zerg players recently who their games are like the exact timings they've got from Lambo's YouTube. And I'm like, that's nice and all, but you are in Diamond League. Please don't.
Lambo's YouTube, though.
It's a great resource, and Lambo's amazing. I'm just like, guys, just don't need to hit the exact same timings as him. If he uses a game timer and says 3:45, you're in Diamond, just add 20 seconds to it, just cut yourself a bit of slack there, because you're going to end up focusing too hard. It's like, I really like when a player practices with someone higher level than them, but only a little bit, like maybe max 20%. There's some players who are like, they want to do it every game, and they end up just trying to do everything perfectly beyond their skill level, and they get stiff in their play and they mess everything else up.
So this one is where everything ended up rather mistimed. So I had a plan, but everything was a little bit too late.
I almost want to give you control, but let's go back and what were the main things that went wrong in this game? Do you remember, or will we just?
Yeah. So what happened? So I think it's slightly. First problem is he actually does his build better, so my timings ended up slightly off. But the other thing is, I think the problem is I'm trying to. I'm already thinking ahead to what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
And we were trying to play fair. So all the time I'm going to go, right, if I don't scout it, I'm not going to react. If I don't scout it, I'm not going to react, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So there's all this going on. And this is where maybe a practice partner isn't so realistic, because you have all this other stuff going on. And result, things just ended up a little bit late.
Yeah. It's a skill learning how to follow your set plan. I mean, it's part of why having a practice partner is good, but it's also part of why playing the game every now and then against an AI. And saying, let's practice my adept response and do everything. The Overlord will scout the exact same way I normally would. We're going to do all the normal things. But
this is actually one of the questions I put in the list, which was I didn't have time to do any practices between these games. They were literally one after the other.
Yeah.
And normally I would go off to the replay and tighten it up a little bit before the next game.
So what's the exact thing in terms of your timing? So you said you go a roach horn. So what? How do you time it out? When do we get this roach horn in the second gas?
As soon as I see the twilight, allowing for macro cycles, there's always a little bit of a delay while I'm faffing about. While the Overlord's scouting, regardless, I put the 2 extra drones on gas, and I make a couple of spare Overlords to allow if I'm going to lose it.
So sorry. So when the Overlord's scouting, you put back on gas, you said?
I put back on gas, make 2 overloads, hop over to the Overlord because it's hotkeyed, And then if I see the twilight, Roach Warren goes down. Now, I think what happens if I'm following my vision, and what happens is I spend ages before I look at this damn scout.
Yeah.
I'm still...
Well, it's a little bit ill-defined. So I really think, we have to send the Overlord through. So we have to stop screwing around with that Overlord and just queue the Overlord from the very beginning of the game. Queue the Overlord to scout from the beginning. That just gives you a chance to glance at it at the 2-minute 30 when it first goes down. Oh, it's a twilight starting. Or the 3-minute mark. Oh, yeah, twilight's just finishing up. Or a robo's just finishing up. Just gives you more time to prepare for it. And let's say we know from the start of the game, rather than timing it out with when I look at the Overlord, when should this Roach Warren and gas go down if we're playing against that? Is there a game timer, a drone count, a supply count? We've got to define that better because it's too random at the moment. That's why it was late this game.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you reckon?
Well, I would expect to get the Roach Warren around about 3:30, just to make sure, to allow for the fact that if I screw it up, it'll go down to 3:40 or 3:50.
3:30 is too fast. Let's say 3:45.
Okay.
And if you do it a few seconds early, that's fine. But if it's a few seconds late, that's fine. Because even with 3:45, it takes like 42 seconds or something to build, something like that. It's 39. If you build roaches as soon as that's done, it's great. So I see always lots of people build their Roach Warren. They want to have their Roach Warren so early. No one's got money to build roaches or supply free when the Roach Warren finishes. There's no point, and it's just costing you money. We'd rather have a few more drones come out. So I want you to err on the side of being a little bit later with it. And if you're like, okay, no, it's consistently like a few seconds late and I can't start the roaches and I want them out, we can move that forward. So that's always flexible. But 3:45. So 3:45, we're going to put down a Roach Warren.
I've already built 3 gases pretty much as soon as it goes down, right?
Yeah, second and third gas at the same time and put back on gas as well.
Right.
So how about we just put all that together? So it's just one set reaction, right? So if you're versus Stargate, when do you put back on gas? If you're up against an Oracle.
Oh, what, the first... you mean the first 2 drones that came off gas?
Yeah, when do they go back on the gas?
Oh, they go on as soon as that scout goes in, around about just after 3 minutes.
So I reckon it would end up being about the same time, about 3:45, 3:30. You're going to put back on gas, right? If it's against Stargate.
I put back on gas is the first. I do that before the scout even goes in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So that's a bit too early usually. We could say 3:30. Put back on gas against Stargate. But if we do it even any earlier, I mean, what do you need it super fast for like a melee? Do you rush melee against Stargate? Why do we need gas so quickly?
I just do it then because it's a convenient trigger. So I've grouped everything into kind of lumps.
Yeah, little lumped up things. Okay, I mean, I'm not going to change that for now. So we'll leave that with whatever you're doing by default. Just keep an eye on it. Make sure it's somewhat consistent with it.
Yeah, it's just that I have to get 2 overlords to allow for the overlord dying.
Yeah.
And I usually have 4 lava at that point, so I just make the 2 drones for the gas at the same time.
So what I do like is with Stargate versus ground play, though, is if we can do the exact same Roach Warren and gas thing, where it's like drop 2 gases and a Roach Warren, you just do it later versus Stargate. So versus Stargate, when would we drop the Roach Warren and the gases?
Versus Stargate, we hardly need it at all because we want queens, don't we? So I would say, like, I'm going to go for 30 seconds later or 45 seconds later.
So what game timer would that be?
That would be 4:30.
Yeah, you can even make it later than that. So we can say 4:45 Roach Warren and gases, a full minute later, until people start hitting you with really sick Archon timings right after one Oracle, or really sick Glaive Adept timings after an Oracle or 2. If that starts happening, we can maybe, like I said, shave 20, 30 seconds off it for now. Let's say 4 minutes 45 Roach Warren and those extra 2 gases. Because in the meantime, we're obviously, like you said, building some spores, building some extra queens. And what's good is that allows our mineral count to stay roughly the same, right? Rather than building Roach Warren and 2 gases early and putting on gas, we're putting drones into spores, building an extra queen or 2.
Yeah.
Just making sure these 2 are well-defined in the most generalized response. So in this particular game, what went wrong here is that wasn't quite defined because... So you like to chain things up with stuff that happens in the game a little bit, and you like to see what goes on.
That's where the fun is.
Yeah, we can still do that. So we can change that. I've written down some game timers for you.
Yep.
Your Overlord's going to know ahead of time. Bam, 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 bam. What's going on? right? Because we're going to queue that Overlord to scout faster. So rather than linking it with, ooh, I saw the Twilight, let's put down the stuff. Because that's too prone to mistakes. You look at it 15 seconds late, your Overlord, guess what? Your Roach Warren's 15 seconds late, right?
Well,
So,
funny enough, this was this way of doing it was a reaction to what I was trying to do before, which was build drone counts and buildings, which I was not very good at. So
yeah. Well, what's something
effort.
else we can tie it to? I mean, there's other things we can look at here, like when your third base finishes, drop Roach Warren.
Well, the drone counts at the natural is a good one because the drones pile up, and now I've got to build gases, and that's a lovely time to think.
Well, that's probably a nice way of doing it then. Just say, yeah, at this point, when your natural's done, right? Because if it was Stargate play, you'd just be rallying to your third and droning that up, right? While starting to build more queens and spores. Against this, it's like, hey, we basically just chill on 2 bases, add the 2 gases, and okay, yeah. So we'll just do it, adding the extra marker there. Basically, that's as your natural hits saturation, right? We'd go for that Roach Warren in second and third gas. That's a cool marker. If you're against Stargate, I don't know. You can check your replays and figure out what time's out to be at 4:45. I don't know. We'll see what happens in your games. But obviously, we're just a bit too slow on it this game, I guess. And
also the control groups got tangled up as well and things like this. This was
well, you never put back on your first gas geyser all game, so that wasn't defined.
I think that was so. This is what I was saying about it's a practice partner game. And obviously we're mic'd up, so we're chatting to each other at the same time to make it even worse. And
okay, that's appalling. Yeah, don't do that. Call when you watch replays. Like if you watch me do one of my build streams or something, every 3 or 4 games we'll get on and just watch a replay and slowly ponder and chat and talk about our frustrations and what's OP about the other one's doing, and and kind of figure some shit out as we rewind the replay over and over again. So I think that's a better way of doing it. I think anytime you're just talking in chat or on voice at the same time, it's such a big distraction because you've got to take that focus. And like you said, it's not natural when you're thinking about, oh, I know he's doing this thing. You've got to go through the motions and force yourself to not blind counter. And that takes a lot of focus, making sure you're like, follow my build, stimulus, reaction, hit this, hit this, hit this. That's very hard to set up and execute under fire.
Okay, so we hit this. At the end of all of this, we're still ended up hitting a situation which is still better than the last game. We're not dead.
No, not at all. We're building a lot of Zerglings. As a general rule, I would say just don't build Zerglings against Glaive Adepts.
I think that was a sort of panic reaction. I had this idea that I might catch them.
Everyone has that idea. I occasionally see pros pull it off. I just as often see pros lose all their shit. It didn't happen to Scarlet recently against someone's in GSL. I think Scarlet was building lings and it's if you get it to work perfectly, it's great. I would say 99% of the time you're better off just building more drones and more roaches, right? Replace the drones that are dying, focus on pulling your drones away from the adepts, and focus on just splitting your roaches up, and you should be all right. So looks like we're just going to get slightly overwhelmed here. 2 immortals, some charge zealots. I mean, that just comes off the early damage, right? Obviously we were going 6 gases and a Hydroden though. Actually, you definitely could have got back in this game. His economy is shit, and his macro is not that perfect. So, that shit we were talking about in the previous game, if we'd followed that, ooh. Was Burrow on purpose?
No.
Okay, so accidental Burrow is not great. The Hydroden, and even
I've actually moved that hotkey. The problem is it's if there's no lava selected and I go and make an Overlord, it ends up hitting Burrow. So I've moved that around since then. Because of this game.
Good move. But yeah, the Hydroden and those upgrades, a massive expense. So you've got, you're limping at this point. In this situation, some of the best comebacks you make against a Protoss who decides to be aggressive is just committing hard to Roach Ravager off like an identical work account, and them overcommitting and you killing all the technicality and having the freedom to drone and take a fourth, or just swing across the map and kick them in the balls and win the game basically. Because he's heavily committed here, right? He's very heavily committed.
Well, I wasn't quite sure because I sent an Overlord across the map, but I think it got killed.
Yeah.
And I was trying to have another scout at the third.
Would have been good if this Zergling up here on the left, that should have been moved down here earlier. As soon as you settled down after the early pressure, right?
So ping again. I'm on.
Yeah.
Oh, that one.
That should have been down there to spot a move out, right? because you've got the watchtower. You don't need that. That left-hand side base is not really going to get taken anyway. Much more important to see a move out from the third.
I think it's a case of trying to be map independent. So I always do the same thing regardless of the map, just because I'm still learning stuff. So that's why there's a link at each third basically automatically.
Yeah, really important to be watching the path, right? But it's just on this map, there's 2 paths that they can come across. So just needed to adjust that here. Information becomes very important here. So so we're actually, like, you've got 1,000 gas right now. You've got more gas than you could possibly spend. You desperately need to be pulling off gas and just trying to get like a few more drones and minerals. You've actually got 5 queens, and yet you're massing queens as well. So you've kind of like, you've let your chaos get thrown into the chaos, your macro, sorry, your chaos get thrown into the macro zone. No, your macro got thrown into the chaos zone.
Yeah. Well, this was the question that I attached to this because I attached a bunch of questions to the replays, and this was the calm after the storm. What is the checklist? What is the immediate priorities? And I mean mentally as well as like what to do in the game.
Yes, yeah. Actually, I was reading that question before. I thought that was a really good one that you were thinking in that regard. So, okay. So we had a plan. We left it too late. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so let's just add a little subheading here. It's like, after the chaos, what's the priority? So off the top of your head, what do you think it is right now? So this is it. Mentally, I ended up being caught out. Really need to go back another minute. Yeah, exactly. So quite a few minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the roach thing. His depth thing goes on for quite a while actually.
This is where it's settled, right at 7 minutes. Yeah.
So I try and get everything mining again. That's good. What the hell was I thinking? I think my next problem was I can't remember. I think I was just trying to get to the next stage. Hang on, I'll switch to my vision because then I've got some idea of what I was looking at.
Yeah. Okay, so you weren't watching on your vision there. Let's go back. Here we go. I was watching on your vision that whole time. Yeah, check this out.
Yeah. Okay. So I saw a little bit of the macro. At least I inject, right? Because this is the headless chicken neuron firing inject make drones. I also build the hydrogen because I just know that's the next step, and I just don't want to be caught out falling behind. So that was a sort of another panic reaction. And then I start putting drones on the third, which is another like twitch reaction, and I can see in the corner of my eye that there's that warp prism still sitting outside my base.
Ignore the warp prism. So unimportant right now.
Well, it's actually very important right now, but I didn't see that, so it didn't do any good. Oh no, I did see it. Wow, I make an overseer.
You actually, you do realize the DTs are coming in, thankfully, which was of course another wave of chaos. But we did have a solid 40 seconds there where our priorities were out of whack.
Yes.
So let's go back. So injecting headless chicken is actually, so the most important thing is your macro cycle. And if we go to this point, watch what you're doing. I'm just going to talk you through what we do in real time. Okay. So drones back to mining, very, very good. Okay, we're going to go to the main and we're going to build a hydrogen in the Evo chamber. Fuck no. Terrible.
Yeah, no, I went there to inject and then got distracted.
we didn't even inject. We injected our 1 hatchery on our natural. Then we look at our third. We're scrolling around a bit. For some reason, we're building a queen when it has a queen standing next to it. We start building some drones, which is good, and rallying them over here. We Q inject in the hatch.
That queen next to it is my creep queen. So my brain went, I need to replace my usual queen, and that's still my creep queen. There's
no queen standing next to it. Yeah, but you never injected the main base, and now you haven't injected the natural either. So it was chaos. Don't get me wrong. You're never going to be as smooth as you should be in that follow-up, but we can tell the priorities weren't necessarily there. So basically, we went tech, extra queens, injecting single hatch, and you can come up with your own rules based on what your habits are, but proper priorities is always the first thing. Underneath everything is just the macro cycle. Now, obviously, if you've got drones off mining, putting those back, that was obviously number one, right? But outside of that, after a chaotic situation, it's inject, spend all your love, like inject all 3 hatcheries in a big cycle. Never do that. Inject a hatch, do some other shit that's on your screen. Inject another hatch, do some other shit that's on your screen. That's the plague of all of us. We've all done that.
I am getting better at that. You'll be glad to know. Since this game.
So after you've done the full cycle,
Yep, this is the bit.
Here's a good one, which is fix your economy. Now, what does that mean? Your economy is always fucked after some pressure. So what I mean by that is there's drones there's too many drones on a gas in the main. Our main base mineral line isn't saturated. We probably aren't even consciously aware of that, right? We have a shit ton of gas, and yet we're mining 4 gas geysers. When we should just pull those off, or at least maybe pull 2 of the gases off and put them on minerals to try to catch up. We've also got sometimes we've pulled every queen to the front. So some of the things with fix your economy is fix saturation, but you're also becoming aware of whether I've got too much gas or too much minerals.
Right.
Too much gas, pull off some geysers temporarily, right? To focus on minerals, right? Maybe you've got if you've just got like 400 gas, I don't care. There's always one guy in Twitch chat who's like, oh, he had 300 more minerals than he could spend. We don't fucking care about that. You're busy. You've got more important priorities. But because we're so high on gas and so low on drones, this is a situation where we could do it.
Yeah. Okay. So get the drones mining again. Do a full macro cycle.
Get queens back on hatcheries is another big one there. So that means often creep queens become injecting queens.
Yeah.
Because that's more important than creep. Unless your creeps, like maybe you leave 1 creep queen to replace creep if it's very important, say, especially against Terran, right? But other than that, it's like actually make that part of the cycle is, oh shit, all my queens are at the front. Okay, I'm going to grab my creep queen hotkey and go inject hatch, inject hatch, inject hatch. And then I can maybe grab this other queen that didn't go to inject and make that my new creep queen hotkey. So I don't accidentally then pull them back all to the front. Something like that. Do you inject your hotkey your injecting queens? I forget.
No, I just the creep queens.
Okay, so you do it that way, like same as me then, where you just kind of need to send a queen to be standing next to the hatchery, and then it's an injecting queen, right?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So get the drones back mining, get the queens back to where they should be, inject everything, balance the economy. Then what?
And then you can focus on where you are in the game. So those are the anchoring things that are always the same. It's get your macro cycles going fully is the biggest one. And that's the one which is the hardest to do because you're like, I got to get hydras at this point in the game. I got to go meters. I got to see what he's doing. Those are all important things. They're never as important as just that first step. So that takes such a weighted priority. I want to emphasize that. But what comes next? So next it becomes...
Sorry. Oh, I was saying, assuming I don't, because so what happened was I fell back into my usual path is this, but probably after that macro step, that's probably a time to actually think. I maybe not build the hydro den. Okay, so now I look at so now in the calm light of 10 o'clock at night, I can look at the map, and I'm looking at the game state now. Is what do I do from here?
Exactly. So. Next up, and I'm writing a little dot point list, map control. So we don't know what the fuck's going on still. Is there another wave? What's happening? So what would we do? We'd send some lings out. Hey, you've already got perfect map control, except for the fact that even at this point, that ling on the left, they're never going to take that base. Should be down out front, right? So one little thing there is a lot of the time we fall into this thing where we have a ling that's both spotting their expansion and it's the only thing spotting that attack path. But same on like Nightshade, I sometimes make this mistake, and then I lose that ling. And I go, cool, they're taking a base. And it's like, no, that was actually just their attack moving across the map through the third base. So I do always like to have backup lings more and more. But already you've got that map control, which is great. Awesome. That's good. You also send an overseer through to just check their setup, right? Make an overseer, queue that through, check what the follow-up is.
I think I somehow managed to lose that overlord somewhere, or I forgot to send it. Because normally I have an overlord tucked behind their third as well later on. It's about the 5th overlord or something, but I think I forgot to say.
Yeah, I mean, that happens. I guess you'd just probably grab this one on creep, morph that to an overseer, and just send it straight across the map. And it'll take a little bit, but it'll get there. After that, it's kind of, even before you have that information, you have to choose a direction. Okay? And if you're way behind, that's usually a very gambly direction. Right? You're like, I'm going to make just Roach Ravager off this drone count, and we're going to look for a giant all-in attack. Hopefully he attacks into me, and I can just surround his army, because he doesn't know I'm coming to attack him. Hopefully he doesn't see it with an observer or hallucination or anything, and then we just surround his army on the map. That's going to make my life easy, but everything's on this Roach Ravager army. Sometimes it's you saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to actually stay, I'm playing a Terran, we're playing Ling Bane. I can't afford gases and muters. I'm just going to stay on these 2 gas geysers in the main and just try to saturate 4 mineral lines and just make a silly amount of Zerglings and some speed banes with it and spread creep. And hopefully I can crush his next big push whenever that comes. And then I'll be back in the game just off the back of overwhelmingly. But basically, you throw all your eggs in one basket, right? So when way behind, gamble / throw all your eggs in one basket, lean really hard on one strategic edge. Hide Aspire and bank money for a 20 meter swap, that sort of stuff.
Right, okay, that's really fancy, yeah, okay. So normally in that situation, I either go, sod it, I might as well macro, or I go the other way and start charging across the map. But I think charging across the map is probably the worst thing. You're saying align weight, basically.
Really depends on the situation and your style. If you've just lost a shit ton of economy, but killed a lot of army, and it's happened in a very quick moment. Say Adepts got in and killed 40 drones in like 30 seconds, but you also killed 20 Adepts and lost no roaches, and you have a big mass of roaches with speed, get across the map, right? That's a simple equation. If it's been a 3-minute Adepts shading around with your roaches chasing their tail, where he's probably been building immortals nonstop during that 3 minutes at home, it's maybe a different story. So it's always very situational. My point here is just that when behind, take more risks and don't try to play the most normal game. Now, in this game, were you massively epically behind and dead? Not necessarily. I'd be happy for you to just try to find your way back to a normal game. So maybe it's chaotic. Maybe it's a different flow. Maybe things have been messed up, but your opponent committed a lot to do that damage. This game's a decent example of that, right? I would say he's a little ahead, but we can say find your way back to a normal game, your normal path, right? So in this situation right here, at this why is this point so important, right? There is no third base. So remember what we talked about in that previous game?
Yeah.
What is our safety point? If we're up against someone who doesn't have a third, and let's say you consider yourself a little behind from the opening pressure, you're a bit uncomfortable, and you're just kind of like, well, there's no third nexus. I want to prepare for a big all-in attack, right? And what's the work account and gas count where you would stop to be safe and just mass roach Ravager?
If I go for the Ravagers, I can actually burn that gas right now and then spend the rest on drones. So looking at it now, that's probably what I do. Because the Ravagers take the longest to make, so I'll just make those.
Ravagers take almost no time to make. Do you mean roaches?
No, you've got to make the roach as well, right? So
yeah, so
I can I can burn the gas quite quickly.
You will be able to, but we don't want to do that until it's actually time to fight, because they morph almost instantly. So there's no point putting money in that until the last possible second. That's why the Ravager is so powerful. It's actually a terrible unit. It's just its accessibility. The fact that you can see their attack move out, or you can be like, ooh, time for me to attack, and just morph 10 Ravagers like that.
Right,
so
okay.
Go back to the standard thinking of, remember, scroll back up your notes. What did we write here? We wrote, if they don't have a third nexus, they're going to go 44 probes. Don't think about the mineral gas balance. Just think about overall what's a safe lead. 55 to 60 drones, we said. 5 gases, right? Now, if you feel a little behind, you might go on the low end, maybe even 52 drones, 4 or 5 gases, right? And just mass Roach Ravager Zergling while figuring out what the next step is. So that way you're by default being safe. And you might be like, oh, that's kind of low on economy. He doesn't even have a third nexus started. That's a sick economy lead. Because if he drops a third nexus, in the blink of an eye, you can build 10, 15 more drones and be at like 66 drones, 6 gases before his third's even halfway done, right?
Yep.
So what we're doing there is we're just going back to, hey, how can I both stay safe here and establish an economic lead? And we're kind of just saying, well, the problem in this game is we rush to that next step of like, let's drone 3 bases while also going Hydras. But now we know what the next step always is, right? It's the potential for that 2-base push. So what you would have in mind is that goal of, okay, I do a macro cycle, I start fixing up my saturation, maybe pull off gas a bit, and then I go, okay, wait a second, how far can I drone? There's still no third. Okay, let's just go to 52 workers and then mass Roach Ravager Zergling. And from there, we can continue to overseer scout and figure out what the next step is. And in this case, imagine you'd be at that drone count very quickly. If we didn't build the Hydra and Evo, that's more drones. Roach Speed and the Queen are also wasted money that should have been drones immediately. So you could have actually in one cycle gone to 52, 53, 54 drones. You want to go to about 56 or 57, maybe even, because you've got to take gases and spores, right? So obviously you don't go just to 50 drones because you chew a bunch up in buildings. And obviously these DTs slowed you down longer, right? So you'd be like, okay, I built those drones. Oh shit, then I deal with that. And then you'd be redroning again. But you can tell with his attack, it would actually be perfect. If we had just 15 more roaches out or something, 52 drones, and then you morph Ravagers when you see this move out, you're like, oh shit, make Ravagers? You'd crush this and you'd be in a sick position.
Right. Okay.
What's cool about that is that's the most standard game plan where you don't even need to know what's happening other than he doesn't have a third. And by default, even if there was a third, you could probably follow the same thing. It would just be obviously a little bit more scary.
No,
the Protoss probing.
That was the problem all the way through, is that I was lacking defaults.
Yeah.
At every stage, really. Things get better in the later replays, in that things get a bit more crystallized.
Yeah. Okay, so that's cool. Let's zoom through some more replays now. So hop out, and what is the next one? Let's zoom through a few more quickly. Adept drone losses. Okay, it looks like they are in the right order, bottom to top in the folder, by the looks of it. Okay, cool. Let's go. Awesome. But this is really cool because we've got those anchoring defaults, and I really like as well. Like if you lost a few more drones there, it's like just go for a big old crazy gamble. You know, there are games that have been won from someone who's like, well, I'm on 30 drones, 2 gases or something. I'm just going to keep making Ravagers and Speedlings. And we're going to try to be cheeky if we can. We're just going to like go and try to bust that Protoss third. And sometimes there's a Protoss on 65 probes who just gets their couple of Immortals and stuff surrounded out front, and you win this game and you go, ooh. You know, I threw all my eggs in one basket. And it's also liberating because when you do that, you're not going, I got to fucking win. If I do this perfectly, I should win. You're going, let's put my opponent through the gauntlet. I have nothing to lose, everything to gain, and you should have a big fat smile on your face when you throw those eggs in one basket, you know? It's like, all right, we've got one plan, we're trying to make it work, and then like you go across with your Ravager Ling, and they're like, oh, I have DTs, and you don't have an Overseer, and you're like, okay, that's fine, like it's done. But it's liberating because you know you're trying to take a game where if you play standard, you have a 0.1% chance of winning, which is your opponent falling asleep at the keyboard. You're taking it to a 20, 30, 40, sometimes even 50% if you get refined enough at pulling off and hiding those cheeky maneuvers.
So this one is in there. I didn't realize we were going to go through them so slowly, but so this one, by now I've got a defense and I'm working a bit more towards it. This is actually about 4 or 5 games further on. And
I'm a little confused by his build order. I wonder if he pulled off this gas in the main on purpose, or if that was purposely trying to hide information. Yeah.
Oh, he is super build oriented. He knows them down to the minutiae. So I suspect there is a. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's him copying something which he's put into practice wrong though. I don't know. I don't like it. Maybe there's a reason I'm not picking up.
We are the opposite type of player. I play totally loose and wing it and charge around the map with lots of little units, and he has a distinct plan.
Let's go back really quickly before we talk about your reaction. Just remember when your opponents are doing glaive adept timings or are very build order focused and they're hitting timings that are so tight they're above their level. One of the best ways you can do in a series, especially when you're practicing, is just go fucking kill them. Now, you forgot Ling speed completely this game, which obviously meant you couldn't do that, but he didn't even have a wall off, and I don't think he saw no Ling speed. He didn't. So he's literally just like, you're talking about, I don't want to blind counter him. Sometimes when you will play a lot of players below Masters League, even Masters League players, who just are incapable of not metering their opponent. And like what he's doing now is beyond the level of what Zest was doing at Katowice. Where Zest was like, cool, my Adept scouted, you're still mining gas and you don't have many drones. And he just kept doing his build, and Rogue's like, I will Baneling bust you now. You spotted this coming. Why didn't you react? 3 games in a row.
not long after this sequence, I think last week, somebody else played a very similar build, and by that time I was putting 4 extra Lings outside the base, and I got those 4 Lings just ran straight in. So now my build includes a couple of shit can happen Lings at the front of their base just in case.
Well, I mean, I would actually just advise you at about 3 minutes as Ling speed's getting close to done, just build 20 to 30 Lings next time you play this guy in a customs, and just aim with the Lings.
Because the whole point of the practice game was to not cheat.
Well, no, but he's cheating. That's my point. His opening is completely
Oh,
bullshit.
was it? Oh, yes.
Yeah, he's building a single adept. He's not scouting properly. He's focusing on hitting his probes nonstop, and he's not checking anything. And if they only build one gateway unit, they're cheating. So it's the same thing. I remember someone beat me with they warped in 3 DTs at 4 minutes 13 on ladder and killed me. And I was like, what the fuck? And whenever something hits me so fast and feels so unfair that I go, what the fuck? My initial response is to say, wait a second. Not how can I fix my build order? My opponent did something fucking naughty. And I've learned that over time, because I used to sit there going, what can I perfect in my build? And there is a point where your opponent's just being so greedy, beelining towards a timing, where you look at it and you're like, wait, you built 1 gateway unit? That dies to fucking anything. Even if they build 2 or 3 gateway units, most players won't wall off well enough to defend a Ling Flood. They will still die to a Ling Flood. So I look at this and I go, 1 adept into this, I'll fuck off. So that's disgustingly greedy. So yeah, I would say you're getting dicked by your opponent metaing you at the same time. Be wary of that. Don't just be worried about them, you metagaming them. Sometimes you've got to cheese them one game to make them a little bit more realistic in their play. And that's why I don't like people saying, oh, we're just going to macro every game in practice. Sometimes you want to keep the fear in each other a little bit to make sure you both actually play, your normal build orders.
Okay. I was going to ask also in general about practice partners and things. I'm a bit conscious of the time, so I want to hack through this. This game, what was happening was I was being this adept rushed, and because it was still a new experience, I didn't notice he was targeting the drones. So what was happening is my reaction was to keep building roaches because I need units because I'm being attacked, and all the while my drone count is getting lower and lower. And I didn't really notice until we come out of the action and I've got some pathetic drone.
Well, this is actually a perfect replay. So with drones being targeted, I mean, in general, that's what they should always do. That's what they should always do. Basically running drones away from adepts and then, putting them back on mining is 80% of dealing with adepts.
Right.
When you're not super prepared. If you're on top of it from the start, it doesn't get that bad. But that's like most players, if you just run the drones away, put them back on mining, you'll minimize the damage drastically.
Right. Well, that's actually, funnily enough, is what happens in the next replay. So this one I tweak, that's what's happening.
That being said, there's something which is more important, which is you're actually better prepared with your timings this game, but you're not using your roaches correctly. So,
right.
Roach defense. Most important is go out front and fight them on the edge or in front of creep. So basically, why do we do that? We need to force the shade. So you're never going to have 2 packs of roaches ready at the start. But if you can force that shade from those adepts out at this overlord on the far bottom right, that shade isn't even going to reach your natural. So what you do is you force the shade. Hopefully you kill an adept because they're a little slow to shade, and then you just run back and chase it. So
you're creeping ahead to the later games actually, because that's exactly what I figure out in about 3 games time.
Awesome, good. You did figure that's good. That's very good. So
and
the thing is,
I worked out how far they shade, so I managed to time it so they landed right in the other roach pack, which I thought was quite cool.
So. Yeah. So basically it's the first pack of roaches intercepts and forces the early shades and tries to zone them out. So you force the shade and then you chase the shades back, right? So you force the shade, chase it, then go back to push the adepts back again, right? Because while you're chasing the shade, they'll try to run in the front to get a deeper shade. But somewhere in the midst of that, you do want to split your roaches into 2 packs, right? So you split up the roaches after 1 to 2 waves.
I'm pulling them off into control groups as I'm egg-morph them anyway.
That's a great way of doing it. So you're kind of like, look, I got 8 roaches up front. Any new roaches already going on the back squad. You're already beautiful. That's exactly it. So
if I do that in this game even, so.
Yeah. The scary thing is obviously losing gas mining when the adepts are targeting drones and you've got to pull drones off. Sometimes if it's like super all in with adepts, you've got to, in the middle of the fighting, put drones back on gas, which is a few extra clicks, but it's worth it if you're very gas starved.
Right. Oh, there's another thing also is I pulled the creep queens back as extra injectors because I figured I was going to miss injects.
Hey, not bad. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Oh, that was good. Okay, right, good.
I mean, I mean, yeah, just queue a few extra injects because you know you're going to get busy in the chaos. That's cool. I like that. I mean, obviously, if the prism tries to fly in at all, you really want to, stop it from flying into your main and grab your queens and shoot it down. But if it's staying nice and far back like this, it's totally fine. And we actually droned to a pretty good drone count, but just once again, we were going a bit too far down the tech tree. So cool. It's good to see that same thing we already talked about. If we were just building Roach Ravager there, stabilized a bit quicker, maybe didn't lose as many drones, that would have been great. Let's hop out of that replay.
Yeah, because that one I end up, while I'm re-droning, is when he attacks me and then I just die, which is what's happened now.
Yes. Yeah, so hop out of that one now and let's... Let's go to the next one.
Yeah. So this is the one where I think so my strategy slightly changes. And what happens is I start... Well, accept the thing.
Actually, sorry, I loaded the wrong replay. Here we go.
Oh, okay.
Ran drones. I did replaced drones as opposed to it. Because it's drone losses, ran drones, replace drones, adepts, etc., etc.
I know, so there's so many.
No, it's good. It's good. We do have to finish up real soon. So obviously...
that's what I'm worried about. So
no
this
worries.
one, I think... Basically, but these two kind of form a pair. So this one I tried running the drones.
Okay. Cool.
As a deliberate strategy, and it didn't work brilliantly. And then on the one that follows this, we can probably skip now. It was actually the first one I won as well. What happened was I just said, "Oh, well, okay, you kill my drones. I won't make more roaches because I'm winning the fight anyway. I'll just make more drones."
Oh, I like it. Yeah. Definitely. Once you feel you're on top of it, that's good. Only risk of that is like if you've misjudged, you're like, oh, I actually only have 8 roaches out. I thought I had 13, like.
Oh yeah, but I can see them when I flip control groups. So I know I've got at least 6 on each, and that's easy to see.
As long as you're paying attention to it, yeah. It's also if they're actually glaive adept all inning. I've once or twice seen someone start droning, and then they're like, is another 8 adepts warped in? And it's like, no, buddy, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Yep. Yeah. So we did some good drone putting back on gas in the natural. That's what I pointed out in that last replay.
Yeah, this is one of the flaws is the gas goes AWOL.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels really weird when there's adepts here in your base and stuff, but basically, yeah, you want to make sure you're doing it. So there was a little bit of a weird issue here where this overlord is in a bit of an odd position down the bottom, but because he lets you have the watchtower, it's okay. But if he cleared that link on the watchtower, it would just be a bit harder to see adepts warping in and stuff. So I would like that overlord to be a bit closer to where the prism is.
I don't know why that's stuck there. I think that's my overlord that's supposed to go over to the third base or something. It's not that, so screw up.
Okay. But yeah, once again, these are
still...
Sorry,
no, you're right. I said the wrong thing. No, that should be out the front of the ramp. I don't know why it's moved. I think it must have got shot at or something.
Yeah, who knows? This is much better crisis management. It's still, hey, it'd be better if we weren't in the crisis, right? Right? If the roach is intercepted further out front. So much better crisis management. We managed to hold with Roach Hydra there, but that's because we were ahead. So once again, it was like we were going too far. So what's kind of been funny with that rush to the Hydras that we mentioned earlier is you're actually winning because you're so far ahead off the opening, right? So you've had to have super sick performance. So even in those games where things weren't clean, you could have stabilized and salvaged a few of those early games, right? With what we talked about. So I really like that we've got this intermediary step now, somewhere between low 40s drones building roaches and going straight to 66 drone Hydra. Now you've got, 55 drones, 5 gases, roaches. Let's actually have this intermediary step for the 2 base timings. Because that opponent, even Geophage, I'm not sure how to say that. Even when he's taking a third, he's doing a 45 to 50 pro push. Like he's hitting you really hard, right? So none of those are really plays that are demanding you get past Roach Ravager. That's a Protoss who's hoping you're rushing a bit deeper and is trying to catch you before you get there, further down that tech tree.
Okay, yeah, because that was actually going to be the next question, which is we hit the point where practice partners, whatever happens, we're going to skill cap each other. One of us is going to be the weaker player in that situation. It's going to hold the other person back. Unless you're lucky enough to find practice partners who are stronger players all the time, you're going to end up with some false answers because your practice partner's skill also caps you as much as yours
well
does.
It's also they just have weird habits, and sometimes your thing does well against what they do and someone else does something that's a bit different. It might be the same level, but it's just better against what you do, or they have a better understanding of how to deal with your thing, right? So that's why, I mean, it's important to always just find a diversity of people, but it's also important just to be self-critical, right? And not just focus everything on, hey, what can I do better? Not what can I do to shut down my opponent's play, but hey, let's just get some framework and stuff and some structure. So we've just given you a lot more structure for your opening response versus Stargate as opposed to versus Ground. We've also given you a lot more, let's send that Overlord in earlier to make sure it gets the scout earlier, gives you more time to know which track you're on. There's still a lot of room for some reactions within that and some things, but I think definitely having the idea of these 3 tiers, the low 40s drones, 3 gases, roaches for safety. You've got the mid to high 50s of roaches, roach speed, ravages, 5 gases, safety against the 2 base attacks, and then a very distinct third phase of 66 drones plus where the Evo upgrades, the Hydras are all coming in. I think even if you end up going back to some of your fluid and slightly by feel ways, as long as you've got those 3 phases kind of clearly delineated as goals, right, for dealing with different things Protoss shows at you, I think you'll always have a clearer target of where you're heading and where you're responding
to. There's one aspect as well, which is how much fun it is. I know that for you guys who take it seriously and play all the time, your strategy is between the games, whereas we don't study between the games. We play the games and kind of have fun while we're playing the games, which is a horribly murderous thing to do because you get caught out all the time. So for us, having a little, we're a little bit more, I guess, in the middle where we just
you want a bit of the intuition as well, for sure. I mean, I think definitely you can do a bit of that. I think it's just one of those things where it's like, if you want to be more intuitive, what are we sitting back for? If you want to be more intuitive, you want to be more aggressive as a player.
No, I normally am.
So I guess we don't want to be coming at it from the defensive standpoint. We want to be looking at that and going, that gateway is not producing after the first unit pops out. Make 30 Zerglings as link speed finishes, or after the second, or the gateway is not being chronoed at the start. Like, look for little tells like that. Look for these ways to be aggressive, or follow a completely different opening even. Yeah.
No, this is the thing. So right now, I think I said a couple of sessions back, is that I'm just trying to learn Standard because I haven't bothered to learn Standard. So I'm going to learn Standard.
Right. Yeah, we've been shoring up that skill set, haven't we? I forgot about that because
ultimately, I don't want to do that. Ultimately, I do want the aggressive, crazy builds that. Well, not aggressive, crazy builds, but ones which throw the game in a direction where we're both forced to feel our way.
Yeah. Do you watch much Bly? Do you watch many of Bly's games?
I have seen a couple, yes. It's not necessarily aggression; it's strategic complexity.
Well, that's exactly what Bly is all about. I mean, Bly forces a chess game through his aggression because he is so fucking reactive with it. Don't get me wrong; it's the more aggressive edge of strategy. But it's also the one where he's forcing people down this rabbit warren of decision making, and he's got so many twists and turns, and it's all about just hard switches. Okay, I'm going to do this thing. And then he learns to scout when his opponent's responding, and then he learns how to just completely shift into something that counters the counter. Like, it's all the strategy of I'm countering your counter. So part of why he goes for such an aggressive thing is he wants an extreme reaction from his opponent that is vulnerable to a very different counter. And that's something I've been doing a lot more in my Zerg play recently because I'm like, oh, this is so fun. This is always creating different situations where, it's mental warfare. Yes,
that's great fun.
I think that's something you can definitely look at. I think doing these more standard openings is still great. The thing is, if you can
fill my gaps, really.
Yeah, the thing is, don't think of it as a goal of you're just sitting in your corner, right? Once you get past that, it's 6 minutes of you playing very generic standard things, or 7 minutes. Have some cool fucking attacks you get into off it. So part of the way you can make it joyful is doing Roach Hydra drops in 3 bases at once after that opening, right?
So this was a sequence where he was attacking me, but not straight after the. If once I get the 3 bases up and I get my Roach, my Hydra out, that's exactly what happens. So you end up with 2 hotkeys and whatever else. The last game, which we didn't get onto, which was the macro game, is me doing that and losing horribly. But it doesn't matter. That can wait for some other time.
I mean, that's cool because obviously it's like we work on those steps as well. It's just as long as you keep that fun, intuitive, tactical mid game, right? And I think that's the playground of it, right? I've definitely coached players where they think that let's shore up the macro skills means I'm sitting in my corner of the map just doing nothing the entire time. And I'm like, oh God, no. It's, we still always in StarCraft 2 want to grab the game by the horns and do some fun, engagements and reactive, intuitive stuff. And we might have a game plan of I want to multi-drop everywhere, but that's going to be different every game. Where you drop, if they're pushing you more aggressively, how much you could split off the drops, how you try to flank their army. There's so much variability within the tactics, and you're just doing it off having more stuff, more tools, which should be more fun. So hopefully we can get into that in the next session, mate. Just hit me up whenever you want to book that in. The schedule's very busy at the moment.
Yeah, a couple of weeks. The next one is got to be cheese. That's my worst aspect is dealing with cheese. I always lose.
Okay, so your homework is to write out. You're saving the replay of each one, and you're writing a little reaction list of, okay, next time I face this, I'll do X, Y, Z. And I want minute details in that reaction list. So that is number one. You're already working on solving your cheese and coming up with systematic responses. So the next time you see it, you've got a much higher chance of beating it. Number two is I can look at what you're writing down and saying you're missing a really big area of fundamentals.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Or
we didn't get onto my big list of questions. Normally I try and sneak a big list of questions at the end so we overrun and I get free time. But I think I've pushed over 20 minutes over.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll leave them in the I'll leave the questions in the, maybe I'll put them in the chat or something in the YouTube video or something.
I didn't see any questions other than the ones for the replays, just the replay.
Yeah, that's
questions.
the ones.
That's all right. I've already been writing the notes in amidst all those.
Okay.
I didn't get obviously to the last ones of the Mac. Change of plan. Karma now. Thank you, practice partner. Have I over specialized in this build? What are the variations? Ran drones. I think we've covered a lot of that through what we've been talking about, right?
Yeah, I think we've missed a few, but it's all right. It's fine. I'm going to stick them in the chat, and then other people can answer them. There you go.
Okay, no worries, man. Wait, I feel like we answered almost all of them. There's maybe one or two. Oh, what triggers your sense of urgency? Okay, there's one or two in the middle. Yeah. Oh, okay. Cool. All right. Awesome, man. All right. No worries. All right. Let's catch up next time. Just shoot me an email when you're ready to book it in and we'll get into it, dude.
Yeah. The tricky bit is I don't have any Terran practice partners that do cheese. So you're going to have to find a player.
A Terran practice partner who does cheese. Twitch chat. Well, StarCraft Twitch in chat. Who wants to fucking proxy racks and do weird Marauder Hellbat shit? Shoot him a message right there in Twitch chat, guys. Hopefully there's someone who's around. Where are you? Platinum 1 at the moment, right?
Yeah.
What's your MMR? 33?
3,300, yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
I was thinking more of the next lessons just so your viewers could see me get crushed 91 times by Reapers or whatever.
Yeah, well, just hit me up an hour before the session the next time we do it with like, hey, 3,300 Terran for today if you can help me find one. And then I can put the word out. And there's always someone around, usually, who we can find very quickly. Even if it's an off-racer. If they're doing crazy cheese, we don't actually mind having an off-racer. It's more that off-racers give us terrible normal games. Anyways, got to run, mate. But have a good night. And best wishes and good health to you and your wife. Hope things settle down a little bit for you, man.
Hopefully, yeah. Right. Yeah, you too. You didn't have the problem in Australia. See you in a bit.
Thankfully for now. Good night, man. I'll catch